Hey up. Right, Wednesday's video was a bit of an epic, wasn't it? I think it's the longest video I've ever made, getting on for 40 minutes. Sorry about that. But that's the nature of recording the audio on that kind of video as I actually film it. I'm able to condense it a lot more when I do it this way with voiceover. I'm going to try not to keep you quite as long today. We'll try and keep this a short video. Just my thoughts really on this whole thing surrounding electric motorcycles and the banning of petrol motorcycles, which is still on the cards. It's not going away, not just yet. Now, first of all, if you enjoy my videos, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. 70 to 80% of the people that watch my videos have never subscribed. And it's downright rude. It doesn't cost you anything. Come on. And the other thing is the cancellation of subscriptions. I'm still getting regular comments on every video, people finding that they've been, long-term subscribers of the channel, but they keep finding every time they watch one of my videos that they've been unsubscribed and they didn't unsubscribe themselves. This has been an ongoing thing with YouTube for years, and at the moment it seems to have reached sort of epidemic levels. It's worse than it's ever been. So please check your subscription status, not just for this channel, but for other channels that you watch as well, and resubscribe if you've been unsubscribed. I've got no idea what the underlying reason for this is, but it is a pain in the ass, and it does hold channels back. So it would really be helpful for me if you just check from time to time. Thanks very much. Right, surprise, surprise, the sale of electric motorcycles has fallen off a cliff, as well as e-bikes, which are different from an electric motorcycle. They are basically an electrically assisted pedal cycle. If you remember, I had one in for review a couple of years ago from Russia. Just to clarify, for an e-bike, an electric pedal cycle, you don't need a license, providing it complies with the current regulations, which are currently under review. Now, the one that had been sent to me, I actually gave away to the local Red Cross shop, because although they're quite a novelty when you first sort of get hold of one and try it out, that novelty soon wears off and you realise that actually you're better off just with a normal pedal cycle. For a start, they're limited to 15.5 miles per hour. The actual electrical motor can only assist you up to 4.5 miles per hour, although the one that I tested, it would assist you right up to the sort of legal 15.5 miles per hour. I'm not really sure why. At which point you suddenly feel like you're riding through glue, and it's incredibly difficult to get it to go anywhere over that 15.5 miles per hour, despite the fact on a normal pedal cycle 20 miles an hour is easily achievable, and those fit chaps that you see dressed as ladies in lycra can actually get them quite easily up to 30 or 35 miles an hour under certain conditions. That'll provoke some comments. Now, technically, I think as it stands at the moment, they're not allowed to have a throttle, although they can have a throttle providing it only works up to 4.5 miles an hour. Like everything with our UK road traffic licensing laws, it's just a complete shambles, and the problem with these e-bikes is they're very easy to de-restrict. It's often just a matter of unplugging a cable. I mean, as I've said, I live on a main road, and there are 3 or 4 cyclists on these e-bikes, not pedalling, who go past my house and a nearby police station at 30 miles an hour, keeping up with the traffic very easily. There's a couple of them that have been doing it for at least a couple of years now. When it suits them, they'll whip up onto the pavement at 30 miles an hour. They're a complete menace, and, the law just doesn't seem to challenge them. Because, of course, technically, they've transformed these machines into the equivalent of a moped. which means that those vehicles should be registered and should have vehicle registration plates. They should have a licence, insurance, and they should be taxing them, but I'll wager they don't. And we've reached a situation now where these motor regulations here in the UK are sort of starting to eat themselves. Now, there's little wonder that the sale of these machines are falling. I mean, you can still get a usable pedal cycle new for around about £200. Alright, it won't be brilliant, but it'll be serviceable for a year or two. But I think the cheapest of these e-bikes start at about £1,300, which is a huge difference, just for a novelty that doesn't really last. Now, I understand that the government is currently consulting about changing the regulations to allow the full use of a throttle, and changing the restrictions to allow them to travel up to 20 miles an hour, I think. I mean, don't quote me on that. It's not really important. What the government is trying to do is raise the bar with these machines to re-encourage people to take them up, because their evil plan is starting to stall. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that you're bringing them a lot closer to moped specification. 10 mile an hour difference. I mean, when I was a lad, back in the late 1970s, it wasn't unusual for mopeds to be able to travel at 40, 50 or sometimes even 60 miles an hour. It had been like that for decades, but our nanny state decided, oh no, you can't trust young men on motorcycles that can travel at those sort of speeds, so they restricted them to, I think, was it 32 miles an hour? So if these changes or proposed changes do go ahead with e-bikes, there's only 10 miles an hour difference between the average performance of a moped and an e-bike. I mean, put that into perspective, that's just twice a fast walking pace. Your average person can run at 10 miles an hour. And of course, the legal difference between the two is an e-bike, you don't have any legal responsibilities whatsoever. But on a moped, it's going to cost your average young lad who needs one to get to work hundreds of pounds a year in insurance and tax, and he's going to need a licence. I personally think it would be more appropriate to sort of take away the restrictions on mopeds. I mean, I don't know what the situation is now, but I know certainly back in the 80s, maybe even still during the 90s, there were a lot of continental countries that young lads were able to ride a moped without a licence or insurance or anything like that, because legally it just wasn't considered that it was necessary. Now, we've only got 5 years of the sale of mopeds left. Don't forget, in 2030, they're banning the sale of petrol motorcycles between 50 and 125 cc's. Which again is ridiculous. As far as fuel consumption and emissions are concerned, these are the least damaging and least resource hungry motor vehicles that we currently have on the British roads. Yet the government has earmarked them to be the first to go. Now, I think the reason for this, going back a couple of years ago when it was first announced, is that the take-up of e-bikes and e-motorcycles was pretty good. So they thought that people would just replace small capacity motorcycles with e-bikes and e-motorcycles, but the sales of both are now stalling because they're too expensive compared to their traditional equivalent, and they are nowhere near as practical. Take, for example, electric motorcycles. Just over a year ago, a chap got in touch with me by email. Actually, he lived fairly local to me. He was due for retirement in his late 50s. I think he had another year to go before he retired, and he thought, as a treat, he would buy himself a BMW electric motorcycle. Now, He commutes 20 miles to work and 20 miles back home every day. And this thing has a range, or a stated range, of around about 80 miles. Now, it's a scooter type, or the pictures of it look like a scooter to me, a scooter type electric motorcycle. Get this, it cost over £12,000. Looking at the specs, its top speed was about 130 kilometres per hour, and it produced around about 20 horsepower. So we're talking about something that has about the same performance as a Royal Enfield Classic 350, but costs about 3 times what a Royal Enfield Classic 350 costs. Now, I don't have a lot of interest in electric motorcycles, so, I haven't looked into it. Yes, I'm sure there are cheaper electric motorcycles on the market, but he wanted a premium brand, he wanted a BMW, so he put his money down on this bike as a treat for himself just prior to retirement. He figured that best case scenario, it would get him to work and back for 2 days, and then he would have to recharge it. If push came to shove on the second day when he got to work, because he did have charging facilities available at work, he might have to charge it before his return home. I think he was being quite realistic when he bought it. Now, if memory serves me correctly, he got it back end of summer, and he soon realised he was going to have to charge this bike up every day when he got home. But it got worse as we moved into winter, and he found that in actual fact the range was so short in cold weather, he was having to charge it as soon as he got to work, leave it on charge all day, just to get him back, and then charge it up again just to get to work the next day. Bearing in mind that to get 80% charge, I think he said it took about an hour. But that's where the problem came in, because you see, at the time there were other people at his place of work, which I think was quite a big firm, that had e-bikes and e-motorcycles, and there was only one official charging facility available for all of them. Now, I don't know how many there were, but this soon became an object of contention between co-workers, because people were constantly, for want of a better word, fighting for the availability of a charger to charge their bikes up. And it became such a hassle for him, he eventually got rid of the bike and bought a conventional motorcycle. This is why electric motorcycle sales are falling. They're worse than the cars. An electric motorcycle is a small, lightweight vehicle that has to be light enough for a person to be able to manhandle it. So you can't put huge banks of batteries in it to give it a long range. The range of these machines is always going to be limited, and that's not just the shortcomings of current technology, it's physics. Which brings us neatly onto the current re-evaluation of the ban on motorcycles of over 125 cc's, because previously it was 2035, and the UK government is currently considering changing that. Now, at the time this video is being made, no decision has yet been made, but the current consideration that the government is making is that they may have to move that deadline back to 2040. And the reason that they're giving for that is that the technology required for these motorcycles isn't quite there yet. Of course, the fact that the sales of electric motorcycles has dropped by 33% in the last year has nothing to do with it. This is what happens when you allow an absolute clown show to dictate transport policies for an entire country. Don't forget, our current Prime Minister, what will it be, about 18 months ago, demonstrated to the world how he had absolutely no idea how a petrol pump works. Probably because he is so wealthy and out of touch with reality that he pays a man to do that for him. Probably the same man that drives him everywhere. Now, don't breathe a sigh of relief just yet. No decision has actually been made to push it back to 2040, but don't forget, last year they did the same thing with motor cars. Yet they left the EV mandate in place, so although they pushed the sort of banning of the sale of petrol and diesel motor cars back to 2035 from 2030, it will be virtually impossible to buy a petrol or diesel car from about 2030 because the EV mandate won't allow that many petrol and diesel cars to be sold. You could well be looking at lengthy waiting lists for such vehicles within the next 2 or 3 years. And although they haven't made it clear that such an EV mandate won't be put in place for motorcycles as well, there's no reason to sort of kid yourselves that it definitely won't happen. We could be looking at the same scenario with those as well. And the Motorcycle Action Group certainly believe that it is on the cards. Now, I've got absolutely no doubt that in the fullness of time there will be a technology that not only rivals petrol and diesel for motorcycles and cars, it may very probably exceed it by a huge factor. But from the research that I've done over the last few years, that's not a few years away, it's not even a few decades away. And one thing is almost for certain: it will not involve using batteries to power such vehicles. Our current Chipperfield's clown circus is without a doubt going to be thrown out of government in the next few months, but it's going to be replaced by a very similar clown show from Billy Smart's circus, headed by a Prime Minister who is unable to publicly confirm whether or not ladies have gentlemen sausages. These are interesting times. Let me know your thoughts on this whole situation. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I do appreciate it. If you would like to show your appreciation, you can do so via my Patreon page or through the super thanks button down below. Either way, it's much appreciated by me. I'll be back next week, so until then, please ride safely, and I'll see you soon.